I never thought a quiet little stream could be the starting line for a war I had absolutely no interest in fighting. My name is Elias Vance, and I'm 59. I spent 30 years mostly in arid places, dealing with logistics and environmental compliance for major defense contractors overseas, the kind of job where you sign off on $1 billion worth of concrete, or you shut the whole thing down. When my wife passed, I just wanted out. I sold the house in the city, bought a tiny cedar cabin here at the edge of the Twin Pines Reserve, a manicured, HOA-controlled kind of place outside of Nashville. I came here for the quiet, the one thing they couldn't pave over. That quiet had a current, literally. It was the runoff stream, maybe 10 feet wide, that snaked right past my deck before it fed into the county reservoir just a mile or so down the hill. It wasn't on any fancy map, just a natural water line, but to me it was sacred. I'd sit there every morning, coffee hot, watching the mist lift, spotting those tiny river otters, sometimes the dragonflies. It was my quiet reminder that the world hadn't gone completely plastic yet, despite the relentless HOA newsletters about acceptable mailbox sizes. Then, one brisk morning around 6:30 a.m., I saw the truck. It was a stark white maintenance vehicle, unmarked except for a small, clip-art-style Twin Pines Community Services decal near the bumper. Two guys in muddy vests, not city workers, certainly not EPA. Just two hurried figures unspooling long, thick black hoses that snaked toward my stream like bad intentions. I called out, "Hey, what in the world is going on back there?" The taller one, younger, flinched. The other just turned a valve. I walked down, the frost crunching under my boots. They didn't have that professional municipal tag. No genuine oversight equipment, just a low, persistent hum from the truck engine. And then I saw it. A grayish, oily film sliding out of the hose, spreading a slick, unnatural rainbow shimmer across the surface of the water. "Are you dumping something in the creek?" I asked, a little louder now, the old regulator in me tightening up. The tall guy finally turned. "Storm runoff treatment. HOA orders. Nothing harmful." He shrugged, rolled up his hose, and they drove off like they hadn't just defiled something fundamental. But as the truck disappeared, I noticed the back license plate was completely obscured by fresh, sticky mud. Someone didn't want to be identified. By noon, the creek was ruined. It smelled faintly metallic, like industrial bleach. I called the HOA office immediately. A woman named Brenda, voice sickly sweet, gave me the script. "If it's scheduled maintenance, sir, it was approved by the environmental committee. I can file a report for you." I pushed. "I want names, Brenda. I want the work order. I want to know exactly what highly chlorinated solvent you just dumped into the county's water source." The sweetness vanished. "That information is not released to individual residents, Mr. Vance." That was my first lesson in HOA politics. A quiet wall of rehearsed politeness designed to hide something utterly rotten. Within 48 hours, I had my lab results. I'd driven 40 minutes to a private Knoxville lab and paid over $100 out of pocket. The young chemist, Doug, frowned as soon as he smelled the mason jar. "Mr. Vance, this is heavy chlorinated solvents, not household stuff. We're talking trichloroethylene, TCE, and a few traces of methylethyl ketone, MEK. Industrial degreasers. Someone is dumping serious chemicals." I felt that cold, familiar knot in my gut, the one that used to tell me a supply chain was compromised in Kandahar. Only this time, the rot was right in my backyard. I got home to a notice taped to my front door. Notice of non-compliance. It claimed my stone-reinforced bank and deck were unauthorized structures within the protected riparian buffer zone, and I had 10 days to remove them or face crippling fines. They weren't just ignoring the toxic dumping, they were retaliating. They thought they could scare the quiet, retired old man into silence. They didn't know the quiet, retired old man had spent his career shutting down billion-dollar projects that didn't pass muster. If the HOA wanted a war over a damn creek, they had just picked the wrong veteran. I didn't argue. I didn't send another email. I walked the creek. It led past the tennis courts, curved behind the clubhouse, and then disappeared into a thick grove of neglected pines near the main maintenance depot. That's where I found it. The source. It was a crude, disgusting thing. A wide, dark indentation in the earth, shielded by stacked retaining walls and dead hedges. A genuine sludge pit. The ground around it was soaked black, greasy, smelling of acid and sulfur. Someone had dug a shallow, makeshift channel from the pit directly into the creek flow, then poorly disguised it with rocks and dirt. This wasn't accidental runoff. This was a dedicated, coordinated waste pipeline. I took dozens of photos, close-ups, wide shots, and collected a new sample. This one thick and viscous. I sent one last email to the HOA board, a single, non-negotiable statement detailing the TCE and MEK levels, the illegal trench, the environmental codes they were violating, and a 72-hour deadline to initiate a full investigation before I escalated it to the EPA and the press. Their reply? The next morning my entire deck and stonework were gone. Every slate ripped up, the soil gouged, timber splintered. A new notice was on my door, cold and concise. Unauthorized structures have been removed as per HOA bylaws section 6.3. They didn't just ignore me. They attacked. Not with words, but with action designed to break your will. It was a show of force, but it only confirmed one thing for me. I was terrifyingly close to the truth. I had to move past procedure. I started talking to my neighbors. Eleanor, a mother across the street, mentioned her twin boys thought the creek looked like silver milk. Jorge, who did part-time landscaping, whispered that the maintenance crew was installing temporary tanks for liquid solvents and were told never to question it. Then Mrs. Kilgore, a sweet retired librarian, confessed to seeing men in suits and blue barrels behind the clubhouse at night. This wasn't mismanagement. This was a conscious, concerted criminal operation. The sickness escalated fast. Eleanor's golden retriever Scout started collapsing, trembling, kidneys failing. The Hensley's terrier went blind. Then the children. Timmy, a quiet 7-year-old, developed an unexplained rash and severe nausea after wading by the water. The HOA's response? A flyer blaming seasonal allergen alert and high pollen counts. The silence of the community was worse than the lies. Everyone was trapped between the fear of confrontation and the instinct to protect their kids. They worried about losing their HOA privileges, about being retaliated against like I had been. I stopped playing their polite game. I started knocking on doors, clipboard in hand, with color-printed copies of the lab reports. Some slammed the door, but others started listening. A headache here, fatigue there, a nephew with tremors. The cracks were widening. I knew the truth didn't matter unless I could prove it in a way they couldn't possibly deny. I dusted off my old Reconyx Hyperfire trail cameras, weatherproof, motion-activated, and completely invisible when mounted right. I placed 3, one near the sludge pit, one by the maintenance shed, and one hidden beneath the footbridge near my property. Within 2 nights I had them. The grainy night vision images showed men, their faces mostly obscured, wheeling blue drums out of the maintenance building, running a long hose, and pouring thick dark sludge into what looked like a holding tank, positioned perfectly to drain downhill toward my stream. It was undeniable. It was a smoking gun. I copied the footage onto 3 separate drives, locked one in my safe, and sent another to Eleanor with instructions. If I disappear, send this to the local news immediately. They eventually found one of the cameras, ripped it from the tree and smashed it into the creek. They keyed the side of my truck with the word liar, but it was too late. The intimidation didn't work. It only confirmed for me that I was right on top of their secret. I knew I couldn't go through the official channels anymore. The system was designed to protect them, so I reached out to Councilwoman Natalie Price, a young, sharp voice on the city council known for environmental advocacy. I met her in her office not with anger, but with facts. The photos, the timestamps, the 30-page contamination report showing TCE and MEK were already faintly present in the city reservoir intake point. "You understand what you're accusing them of, Mr. Vance?" she asked, her expression tight as she flipped through the lab sheets. "I do," I said simply. "It's a criminal environmental dump. A liability nightmare for the entire town, and the HOA is the infrastructure they're using to hide it." 2 nights later, someone, anonymous, posted one of my trail camera videos to the Twin Pines Facebook group. The caption was just 2 words, "Poison Creek, the damage was done." By sunrise, the page was private, but the floodgates had opened. People were finally asking the questions the HOA had spent months suppressing. The time for quiet collecting was over. The time to go public had arrived. The cease and desist letter they sent me next was a masterpiece of legal malice. They accused me of defamation, unauthorized surveillance, and disseminating false data. It wasn't a warning, it was a scalpel, designed to cut the legs out from under me. They were scared. And that feeling, that cold sweat on the hands of the powerful, it gave me the only kind of power that mattered. Certainty. I called Ellen Reyes, the freelance journalist who'd covered those contractor scandals for me years ago. I laid it out. The chemicals, the kids, the trail cams, the legal threats. They're poisoning a town's water supply, I told her. She didn't interrupt once. I'll be there in 2 days, she said. Eleanor and 5 other neighbors quietly slipped me signed statements. Names, addresses, symptoms. People were waking up. That night I wrote my own response to the HOA legal committee. Not a rant, but a vow. I will not be silenced. Any attempt to suppress factual reporting through intimidation will be documented and forwarded to my legal counsel, the EPA, and state regulators. Consider this your notice. I'm not going anywhere. I hand-delivered a copy to every mailbox at dawn. No hiding. No more secrets. Ellen arrived, filming everything. The creek, the sludge pit, the dying trees, the pale skin of the sick children. She interviewed Eleanor, capturing her raw, furious grief. By the next morning, her 3-minute video teaser was live. The creek that's killing Twin Pines. It hit 100,000 views in 24 hours. Then the call came. Eleanor. Her voice was shaking. It's Ben. He collapsed this morning. They rushed him to the ER. Ben, her youngest, only 5, that sweet boy who chased butterflies by the stream. His lungs had seized. Chemical exposure was suspected. He was stable, but with lesions in his throat. The official HOA statement, buried in a 3 a.m. PDF email, blamed false or alarmist information and cited community guidelines. They were doubling down, even as children lay hooked up to oxygen, but the silence had broken for good. A group of parents stood outside the HOA office with signs, "Our kids deserve clean water. Stop the poison." I filmed the whole thing. Ellen released the second video. Ben in the hospital bed, Eleanor speaking through tears. The pressure became a physical, unavoidable thing. Councilwoman Price demanded an independent environmental audit in front of a packed city chamber. The mayor had no choice but to agree. Inspectors in hazmat suits descended on Twin Pines, yellow tape everywhere. 3 days into the audit, the confrontation I knew was coming finally arrived. I opened my door to Bryce Sterling, the HOA vice chair, in his usual pressed khakis, flanked by 2 corporate lawyers. He didn't even try to smile. "Elias," Bryce said, his voice flat, professional. "We'd like to offer you a settlement. In exchange for your silence, you retract your statements, withdraw your complaints to the city and EPA. The HOA will offer substantial financial compensation and drop all legal considerations." I stared at him, the old bile rising in my throat. "You're offering me hush money." He smiled, cold and wide. "We're offering a solution." I leaned in, my voice low, dangerous. "I've seen 5-year-olds throw up blood, Bryce. I've seen pets die. I've seen trees bleed black and fish float belly up in the water where you dump your waste." I paused, letting the silence hang. "And now when the walls are closing in, this is your idea of damage control?" He said nothing. "You should be in handcuffs," I added, stepping back. "Not handing out bribes." I closed the door on his face, the sound a definitive final note. I immediately emailed the city council the recording I'd made of the entire exchange. The storm broke completely. Bryce resigned within the day. More kids got sick. More lawsuits were filed. The maintenance director confessed. The stage was set. The town hall meeting was overflowing. The air was charged, expectant. When Councilwoman Price called my name, I walked down the aisle, the USB drive in my pocket, the cease and desist letter in my hand. "My name is Elias Vance," I said, my voice steady, clear, "and I have proof that our HOA has knowingly poisoned our water." I presented the lab results, the photos, and then the grainy, unforgiving footage of the night dumping played on the projector screen. No sound, but the horror in the room was palpable. Gasps, quiet sobs, and a wave of furious energy that was undeniable. I held up the letter. "They tried to silence me with this. They called me a liar, a rogue operator, but everything I've said has been backed up by evidence they can't erase anymore." The applause that broke out was righteous, furious, not polite. The council voted 6-1 to place the entire HOA under investigation, freezing their assets. Years of tyranny, petty fines, and arrogance had finally boiled over. The people had taken the baton. The trial lasted 8 days. The evidence was overwhelming. My footage, the financial analyst tracing illegal contracts to shell companies, the hospital records of the children. When Charles Watt, the HOA president, finally took the stand, he was tiny, defeated. Under cross-examination, the prosecutor pulled up an internal memo from his email. "Keep disposal off books. We don't need a paper trail if it's out back near the creek. Tell maintenance to handle it quietly. The jury convicted them on all counts. Watt got 18 years. The civil suits began, bankrupting the HOA. Twin Pines Reserve, the quiet, manicured community, became a national symbol of corruption and accountability. I walked down to the stream one last time that fall. The EPA was still treating it, the orange buoys bobbing like silent warnings. The frogs were gone. But then I saw it, a flash beneath the surface, minnows. Tiny, resilient. A beginning Councilwoman Price led the charge to officially disband the HOA. I was offered a position on the new resident-led committee. I declined. My part wasn't about power. It was about truth. One quiet December morning, Eleanor and Ben came by. Ben, a little older, a little healthier now, handed me a wrapped stone. Inside was a smooth river rock, painted with blue swirls and tiny frogs, and 3 words written in uneven capital letters. Keep it safe. I couldn't speak. I just hugged the boy. The creek is healing. They've remediated the soil, installed a permanent filtration system. I still check the water once a week. I volunteer to teach local kids about spotting chemical damage in nature. Ben is always in the front row. My life didn't return to the quiet retirement I planned. It became something louder, something necessary. I learned that the greatest poison isn't always the solvent in the water. It's the silence in the face of injustice. We won, not because I was a hero, but because the whole town finally chose to speak. The old stream still flows outside my window. It sounds the same as it always had. But now it whispers something new, a steadiness, a quiet strength. You did right. And that's the thing about community fights. It makes you wonder what your own HOA, what your own local government, what your neighbors are really hiding beneath the surface, doesn't it? Have you ever had to fight a system that was designed to silence you? Tell me about it in the comments below, and let's talk about the real price of silence. Don't forget to like and share this video, because sometimes telling the truth is the only defense you have.